in weeks. I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. I mean, the last time you sat down and took the time to just become immersed into the game for no reason other than to just do it. A game can be both simple to pick up and have meaningful progression. The ease in playing can come from how the game teaches the player. And there's a good reason you haven't picked up the game in a while. It's because the game's kind of boring. If you're like me, you've been playing Minecraft for a decade. If you're especially stupid like I am, you will have a career revolved around it and consequently spiraled into a deep depression where the thing that brought you joy is now tied to making you money and you're afraid that you're gonna end up like every other boomer who hates the job. Unfortunately, Minecraft sucks at making players feel good while playing it. The vanilla survival experience in Minecraft is mind-numbingly boring and hasn't changed in any significant way since 2011. All the time, I see people commenting things like, this game is only fun with friends or mods. And while I disagree with them in some ways, it's very easy to understand why many people feel this way. We've grown up. Minecraft hasn't. It's kind of like an old, reliable car. It always works, but you're not thrilled to drive it anymore. When you're at home, you want something to do, it'll work, but it doesn't go 0 to 60 like the new cars can. Even still, it's always there waiting for you to open the garage. Always an option when you need to take a nice evening and a relaxing drive. I believe that the reason Minecraft feels so boring to many players is because it lacks any real sense of progression. As I said previously, progression is one of the most important factors of any video game. Progression can come in many forms. In some games like Mario, it's in your ability to take on more and more difficult parkour challenges as the game goes on. Utilizing the knowledge and skills that you've gained from earlier on to take on the challenges in the end game is a very rewarding and engaging experience. Another great example is Metroid. Metroid games are like the pinnacle of progression. Players start off extremely weak and fragile, only to build up to extreme strengths through exploration and challenges. Other open world games like Terraria offer a more meaningful progression than Minecraft does. In fact, let's talk a little more about Terraria. Part 1. Terraria. In Terraria, players start with extremely lousy tools. These tools are not only agonizingly slow when it comes to gathering materials, but also have -1 range compared to any other standard tool. This is particularly engaging for a couple of reasons. One, starting with slow tools means that players have a need to obtain faster ones that can mine more. Two, having better tools incentivizes players to explore more things with those tools. Tools never break in Terraria. Instead, Terraria intentionally makes the early game feel slow, sluggish, and awful. For example, when using copper tools, players may find they mine materials like gold or platinum extremely slowly, but when they upgrade to iron tools, mining gold becomes just a little bit quicker, and so does mining everything else. While mining, they may come across this strange purple or red if you're weird, or that they can't seem to break. Luckily, coming back later with a new gold or platinum pickaxe allows them to mine it, as well as break other blocks much faster. You may expect players to be stoked about getting their hands on this new sweet ore, but by this point in the game, players likely already know what it is, and that's because of one horrible, massive eyeball. Part 1.1. Terraria boss fights. The first boss in Terraria is King Slime, but nobody gives a shit about him, so let's move on. The second boss in Terraria is the Eye of Cthulhu, a massive eyeball that floats in the air and summons other little eyeballs to attack the player, and then later grows teeth in the second phase of the fight. Players can summon this boss in one of two ways. The first way to summon it is by smashing 6 demon contact lenses together, but that's boring, so who cares? The second way is likely how many new players first discovered that their life was about to become really, really bad. You see, when a player has silver armor or tungsten or higher, there is a chance that when night falls, they will get a very strange message popping up in the corner of their screen. To a new player, nighttime is already extremely dangerous. Early on, players have likely died several times to zombies and demon eyes already. To be told very ominously, you feel an evil presence watching you. As soon as night falls, it's terrifying and certainly made a 13-year-old me panic. The Eye of Cthulhu fight is both genius and perfectly executed. It's a real challenge for new players and certainly necessary to progress the game and build up your character past gold or platinum tools. Most players will die fighting the Eye on their first couple of attempts. If they're crafty enough, they may already have a decent build ready for the fight. Bow's arrows are slow, but pack a decent punch against the boss, especially if they're lit on fire. Some may get lucky enough to even make it to the second stage, the stage where it grows teeth, but they are even more likely to die due to the boss's increased speed. The reward for this fight is a bunch of that fancy purple or red stuff that the players came across earlier, except now they can craft a couple things with it. Players can make a really powerful new sword or even a new powerful bow, but it feels like there's supposed to be more to it. If you're a very astute player, you may have noticed that this new aura is reminiscent of that creepy biome you died in several times on your way to the ocean. It's called the Corruption. You might want to pay attention to it. Your little guide friend told you to make some weird worm bait using a demon altar, whatever that is. But hey, he hasn't steered you wrong this far, so, you know, what's the big... What is that? It's a strange floating orb? Well, don't mind if I do... Oh, I got a fucking gun! Guns radically change how players have been dealing with range attacks up to this point. Arrows from bows shoot extremely slow and can be difficult to aim. Guns fix this problem. Bullets shoot much faster and pack a decent punch. The only issue is, the gun you got is extremely slow at firing, much slower than that bow you've been using. So naturally, you buy a slightly weaker gun that shoots faster from the merchant, and you're off blasting that worm thing the guy told you about. This is a really good example of effective progression. The player learns key information about where to go next via the game itself and organically discovers new things that radically change how they approach the combat at each point. The gun versus bow predicament is just one example of how combat evolves as you continue to play, but that's not even the best part. You don't have to kill the Eye of Cthulhu to get the gun. That's just how most people do it. In the footage you're watching, I got the gun first, and an extremely powerful melee weapon, and I used them both to just fly through these boss fights. If a player has extensive knowledge of the game's mechanics, then they can take on the challenge of entering the Corruption before ever having good gear and getting their hands on much more powerful items before most other players would, allowing them to breeze through some of these boss fights as a reward for their knowledge of the game. The Underground Corruption is extremely dangerous early game. To have the ability to overcome that difficulty and be rewarded with some really powerful tools in the process is amazing progression. This progression extends beyond just combat though. Players can find small pieces of gear that allow them to jump higher, jump twice, run faster, swim faster, be immune to lava. There's all kinds of pieces of gear that you can find. Terraria keeps things fair by limiting the amount of gear you can use at any given time, and due to limited inventory space, it's very unlikely that players will keep tons of gear on them to swap in and out, forcing them to think carefully about what armor, weapons, and gear they choose to wear when they are out and about. After you get done destroying that little worm guy, you realize it's been dropping scales this entire time. Using these scales and that fancy ore you found, you can now craft all new armors and tools. With this new gear, you can finally start
We're in this together. All of us.
Shed the weight of your doubts, and your mind will become clear.
Keep in sight. I'll have us in and out in no time.
Better get paid after all this. I don't like having my time wasted.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attack, police. Capture.
Hostile spotted. Gotta go. Maximum firepower. Good to see you. Disrupting. Enemy down. Dodge this. Not your finest hour. Protecting. Not so fast. I have eyes on the sniper. ready to overclock. Three, two, one. This ends now. Get in there. Let's keep this up a notch. Cybernetics regulated. How's that for a flyby?
I have you. Keep fighting.
Area denial. Here it comes.
Supercharged and on fire.
You're falling apart.
Let them up. And we're making progress.
I need healing. Dodge this. Thanks for the help.
Score 3-0. Switching sides. Prepare your defenses.
Mining your way through the corruption biome. Eventually, you talk to some old dude at a big dungeon, then he just explodes into a floating skull with arms. You know, no big deal, just like any other Tuesday. So you take him down, then suddenly, progression splits in a very meaningful way. You can choose one of 4 paths related to combat: melee, ranged, magic, or summoner. You can craft molten armor for melee, bone armor for ranged, jungle armor for magic, and to be honest, what do summoners do? What do they do? Hold on. They get obsidian armor? B armor? What?
Safety first. Taking down enemies first
The best laid plans have backup plans.
We must all find a cause worth fighting for.